Hey, Zach here with AtoZrunning. So what we're doing in this video is, and some of you have noticed because if you've been at the races where I've been doing this, I've been running with a GoPro occasionally lately in races. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to record in-race commentary while I'm racing from my perspective as the one who's running the race. And so as a consequence, the video is intended to be updates about the race from the person running during the race. And what I did here in this one is this is the Bayshore Marathon, 2022 Bayshore Marathon. And I tried to record kind of like a first-person experience of what was going on at our spot in the race. Now, that said, let me tell you what I was trying to do in the race itself, the game plan. Before I start getting into the footage, I'm going to offer commentary kind of throughout to help clarify some of the things that were going on. As you can imagine, I'm running a marathon. I'm not a terribly long-winded. As a matter of fact, it's the only time that I'm not terribly long-winded when I'm talking, right? And so in this one in particular, this race, the goal was, quite simply, to just try to win the race. And I didn't know the degree of competition that was potentially there, and I didn't know exactly what would unfold, as you never do. But I simply wanted to see if I could run a comfortable race strategy and use it to then win the race. And so I wanted to be comfortable in the first half, stay calm, relax, those kinds of things, and then hopefully dial it up a little bit in the second half, and then especially the last 10K, really try to drive things home. So knowing that as the race plan, any guesses how long that plan lasted? Let's go ahead and get started, and we'll offer some commentary throughout. It's got 2 hours of memory card space.
Tell you what, the group I was with, it was
walking over.
Nice.
Okay, so let me just quickly mention that as we're walking up to the race, all kind of like calm and cool as we were very late for the start of the race. It hadn't started yet, but it was going to very soon, and I had done none of the warm-up stuff that I would usually like to do for a marathon, like literally zero. And so the only benefit I had at that moment is that at least I was able to use the restroom before we showed up a minute or two before the start of the race. Woo! That's some sunshine. That's nice.
We're just going to try and stick with it.
You got this!
Watch is ready to start. Gotta double check that. Got the bottle. Wearing shoes.
2 miles.
Bib.
We are going to get you off and running.
Runners on your mark. Get set. Go!
All right. Relax into it. Ease in. Okay, pretty typical start there for me. A lot of runners often ask me why I'm not trying to be like right at the front of the start line in the race. Not that everybody has to try to be at the front of the start line of the race, but I never try to be. And most of the reason is because I really just want to let other people set the tone and kind of try to see where that goes and what it ends up being. I'm also very rarely very patient with that strategy, so I often work my way forward pretty quickly and then later on wish I wouldn't have. But as it were, I intentionally don't start near the front. Something like a mile or so in. Look at that view. Okay, 1 mile into the race, and already you can see quite clearly my race plan is not being implemented especially well. I am certainly not running terribly relaxed and chill at this point, as I'm already starting to think about how I'm going to compete with these guys in the front of the race. Not off to a good start, Zach. About 3 miles in. Got to stay comfortable and find a good rhythm. Okay, seriously, people, 3 miles into the race, and I'm starting to doubt already that maybe I'm going harder than I should be. When you're 3 miles into a marathon and you're starting to ask questions about, is this too hard, or am I going too hard? You should listen to those doubts. They're important. I didn't. That's Luke. I'm Zach. We talked about the plan for the race. The goal is, I don't know, and the strategy is what feels good. Best plan you can have for a marathon. I should further clarify that I literally asked Luke that question, and that's exactly what he said in response. And so, you know, a little bit of hilarity between the two of us there for a minute, but also typical marathon scenario. And so now we get to find out whether both of us will enjoy what we ended up doing. Look at these views. Pure Michigan. It's amazing. Let me add to this that I often do try to enjoy, if it's a scenic marathon, try to enjoy the scenery a bit in the early stages of a marathon, because it is almost impossible to do so in the late stages of the race when you're feeling terrible. And so this was me just taking in the sights a bit, knowing that I'm not even going to remember them for the second half. Aid stations have not been a total disaster. I've dropped one cup and soaked myself with another, but that's not too bad. Okay, so we're about 8 miles into the race at this point, and I'm starting to make these kinds of like doubts of whether we're going too hard and such quite a bit more regularly. But of course, I don't change anything about it, and so we'll find out pretty soon what pace, in fact, I was running. But I should mention those aid stations, because I was struggling with aid stations. I was wearing a bottle. I took my flip belt and I wore the 10-ounce bottle with my like race juice mixture, but it's very dense and I need water to complement that, or it's not going to work well. So I was trying to grab water at most aid stations, just take a sip of it, but they had at a lot of them they had these plastic cups, and every single time I try to grab it, it just slip out of my hand. So I'm soaking the race aid people every time, because I hit the cup and it just goes flying and it's getting everybody all wet. So I'm sure that they were angry about that. I wasn't terribly pleased myself, but my grab rate of those plastic cups is like bad, like 1 out of 4 at best. Half marathon leader. Nice work. I'm gonna take a stab in the dark and see if that was Smoke Oleski. Yeah. What's that? I've been up here. Yeah, there he is. Here we go. Evan? Up there. Very cool. Always love when you can pass another race and kind of see how the leaders are unfolding in the other one. That was very fun. Wow. Here we go, Jacob. All right, Jacob. So that was awesome, seeing Jacob, another A to Z runner, and Zach was just shortly in front of Jacob, but I couldn't get the camera on in time to film Zach as well. Sorry about that. Both of them were en route to PR half marathons, though, which was really cool to find out after the fact, too. Nice work, guys. Tons of fun. So those of you familiar with the Bayshore Marathon, half marathon, understand what started happening here. So as soon as you start passing other racers, in this instance, that when we started passing the half marathoners, basically from that moment on, for the rest of the race, we're at about mile 9 when it happened this time. It's actually usually a little bit earlier because they started the half marathon late. But for about the rest of the race, there's just people constantly cheering and, like, you know, the good job stuff and thumbs up and everything. For the rest of the race, you're passing half marathoners as you're going out, and then you turn around at halfway and it's an out and back course. So then you're passing the other marathoners on your way back. And then also we caught up to more half marathoners and we're passing them. So we had marathoners on one side, half marathoners on another side, and there may have been some 10K runners mixed in there at some point too. So what it ended up being was just like constant people. And that has some pros and some cons, as it were. It's very exciting, and so the energy is really high, and we love, you know, as runners, we love the social sense, like we're doing this experience amongst other people. That's why it's much more compelling to do that with others than just by ourselves out on the roads. So in that sense, that was great, and I always love that. But in the other sense, it's very difficult to self-monitor when distracted at that high of a level, especially when the distraction is a contribution of energy. So you're getting this injection of excitement that's pretty much constant for, in our instance, you know, for 16, 17 miles. that becomes very difficult to self-monitor. And I noticed that in both instances when we were going past the half marathoners the first time, and then the way back when I was starting to feel the effects of the race a bit more, which we'll talk about here. So that's an important one for us to try to consider and do as well as we can in that kind of an instance.
Almost fell down on the turnaround, but aside from that, halfway in, and once again, I hate knowing the half marathons, but too many thoughts, too many doubts, too many emotions, especially when he's running so easy, breezy.
So there you go, big reveal. We went through the half marathon in 1 hour, 8 minutes, 45 seconds. So that's 2:17:30 pace at the half. That at that point, up to this moment in my running career, this is the fastest I've ever gone through a half marathon. At no point did I ever think that I was going to go out there and run a PR marathon. I didn't think that that was the nature of what I was going to be able to do that day. And so now that I see this half marathon split, the comment I made is exactly accurate. So I'm very much concerned that I have just shot myself in the foot, and the only thing I can think is maybe I'm not alone in that. And so now it's just hold on, hold on as best as you can. Let me give you a little bit more context though, because this is just kind of crazy. 5 weeks before this marathon, I had run a half marathon, not at like 100% effort, but certainly a good strong effort, and I felt like I'd been working hard for it, and it was just under 109. So I ran a single half marathon only the same time that I just went through the first half in this race. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm certainly feeling a lot better at this point than I was during that half, but there's just no way it's going to last. And so now I'm doubting whether I should be doing what I'm doing in that moment. And the thought in my mind is, okay, that damage has probably already been done at that point. I'm already halfway in. Now what I have to do is decide what's the best way to proceed to have the highest chance of still winning this race. And my only thought at that point was I have to outlast the other guy and hope that it's going to be hard for him too. And so keep the pressure on, knowing that it won't last, but how long is going to be the big question. So now you get to find out whether that paid off.
All right.
Great job.
Good job.
Getting close to 18 in.
Good job.
Luke's back there somewhere around 16. I don't know if I accelerated or if he faded, but I'm not feeling great. And I wish I were. We'll see.
All right, well, 18 miles, and this is the part where the race started to really get interesting. I thought Luke, you can see that on the camera, I'm recording myself saying, he's kind of fading back, and you look back there, and he's actually he's right there. And I thought he was way back. So this is one of those examples of, because there's so many people around, I was a little disoriented. Like, I'm hearing footsteps all the time, and so I couldn't tell when he was fading or not, and I thought for sure that he wasn't there anymore. Well, that proves not to be true. But let me also add to the comment here. He's going to make another move here soon, and we're going to see something with this. But at this point, we're still, at 18 miles, we're still on a pretty strong pace. So we had been running about 5:15 pace for the first half. At 18, we're still running 5:20 or even just a touch under, touch over for those next 5 miles after the half marathon. And so everything's still really kind of full steam ahead at this moment. And I'm starting to feel confidence that maybe is a little misplaced.
Last 2 miles has just been a yo-yo back and forth between Luke and I. Still there.
All right, hat off to Luke Hickman for this tactical boldness that he shows. So I mentioned, I thought I had broken him off, and not long after I'm making those comments into the camera, he comes blazing past me, like strong, decisive move. And you know exactly what's going on here tactically, because if he goes by me that strong, it immediately makes me think he's just got it. Now he's going, he's taking off. And if I break right there, if I say I can't keep that up, he's got me beat, then he's going to win that. Even if he doesn't hold it, he's going to win it because he's going to break me mentally. And I'm starting to feel it at this point. And so he's banking on the fact that I might indeed react that way. And so that's just great move, Luke. As a consequence, we ended up having our fastest mile of the race during that mile as well. So he kind of like really just made things happen right there. Now, what ended up happening in my head, and the important thing here that I don't know, it's like I'm not saying that this was a positive testament to anything about me as much as I had already committed to doing whatever I could to beat him. And so when he goes by me in that moment, it wasn't a question of like, I can't hold this, I'm not going to be able to keep up. I already knew that I wasn't going to be able to hold it, but I was still committing to try to outlast the other guy in my head. And so he goes by me and I just kind of tag on. I couldn't quite keep up. I really couldn't keep up with him when he first went by me. But I just kind of tagged on a bit and kept him close. And sure enough, after a little while, he started coming back. And that was kind of the moment where it's like, maybe that was a last ditch move on his part. Maybe not. But even so, I haven't lost yet.
Battle of attrition now. My quads are bad. 6 miles to go. Just gotta hold.
So a little bit further clarification on what's going on here. Somewhere around mile 16, 17, I started to notice that my quads were not feeling the same as the rest of me. Like the degree of fatigue was accelerating with my quads and it was getting uncomfortable quite fast. And so that was 16 or 17 where I started to notice that, but it was just, you know, kind of behind the scenes. Mile 20, it was clear that I'm not going to be able to keep it. I'm not going to be able to keep my quads. Something's going to go wrong. You know, the catastrophe is near kind of sensation. And mile 21 is when that became abundantly clear. And you'll see in things like the splits at this point. So mile 21 is when I lost touch with the pressure on the pace. And that means I just began kind of a slow deceleration. It was slow enough that it wasn't dramatic or immediate, but it was like 5 to 10 seconds per mile that I began to lose, and I would just continue to lose the rest of the race.
Hitting mile 23. Oh, those quads are bad. See if I can hold on.
Oh, you know how this goes. Here we are at mile 23. Somewhere between 21 and 23 is when I started counting miles. And like, I already know that I don't have very many more to go, but now it's like every time I'm just thinking about the next mile marker sign and what that means of how few I have left. And then I start to guesstimate, am I about a halfway yet? So is it a mile and a half, or is it, 2.5 or 2? And so you know how that goes. Basically that means that I've already kind of given in to the misery of it, and I'm just hoping for it to be over. But I'm in that situation where I can't let up. I have to try to keep as much pressure as I can because I'm still in position. I'm still winning this thing, and yet know that if someone were to challenge me, like, I don't have it anymore, but I'm out in front at the moment. And so I've just got to hold as much as I can every single mile, but I'm still losing time. And this is where I'm going from 5:20s. Now I'm starting to run 5:30s and not seeing any kind of improvement in sight.
Got about a mile and a half to go. I'm about to lose my quads. We'll see how long.
This is brutal. Mile and a half to go. And at that point, somewhere around 2 to a mile and a half to go, I started to stop feeling like I was running anymore. It's almost like I know that my legs are still moving, and it seems like they're moving in a running way because I'm still moving forward, but it just doesn't feel like I'm running anymore. Something just is disconnecting, and not in a good way. And so at that point, I am continuing to slow, and I no longer have a sense of like I can push or anything like that. It's just try to stay upright, and hopefully I'm not slowing down too much. I am still, at this point, I'm still running around 5:40 pace. The last 2 miles are in the 5:40s somewhere, and so I know that I'm moving along at a decent rate, but it doesn't seem like that anymore. Everything's just fogging. It is not good.
Here we go. Finish on the track.
Runners everywhere understand the feeling of crossing the finish line, regardless of how the performance goes, and especially in distance races. The ultra runners understand this far better even than the marathoners. But as a marathoner myself, I've experienced it enough that I just know, like, it really isn't going to matter. Even if I ran far worse than I expected or hoped, I'm going to love that moment when I cross the finish line. It's like this, there's a kind of catharsis or euphoria that happens in the finish line moment that, barring, acute injury that is very, very bad, there's kind of like this sense of, I did it, I'm done, which is great. So wonderful. But there's add to that things like, if you can accomplish a sense of accomplishment and success, and it's like emotion starts kind of tumbling and you never know exactly what to do with that. It's a wonderful thing.
Now the walk. If you stop, you're never gonna start again. Just keep walking. Let's go back here and see if we can find Luke. See how he did. All right, well, gut reaction, went out too hard. 108 and change, 109-ish at half was way too fast for the moment. Left me with no quads for the last 5 or 6 miles. But all told, that could have been worse.
Well, I think that summarized it fairly well. Bayshore Marathon is an incredible event because of the people who are doing the event. The runners out there and the spectation that happens. Is that a word? Spectation. The spectating that happens. It's just an incredible thing. And so, many who do that event often talk about that, just a really positive atmosphere experience. And you can see that even like that finish on the track, and there's crowds of people in the stands, just like sitting there watching the runners finish. And, many of them are watching for their own people, but in many instances, as I'm seeing people, like their people are finishing and they're just still cheering for the next one that's coming across the line. And that's really fun. That's really exciting. And then you have that period of time, and we all know this in races, where you're kind of like just walking through the finish area and everyone's done and you're getting like the snacks and stuff and you're just chatting with each other. And it's just so good to be in that moment. And that Bayshore experience was a really positive one for that. So certainly I would express the same appreciation that so many have expressed, that, cheering for other runners as we're running past, and we're all out there trying to, grind it out and do our thing, and yet taking a moment and a breath to cheer for the next person going through, and even just the wave or the thumbs up and something like that. So very exciting time. Pulled off the primary goal, the victory, which certainly, victory at all costs is not always a loss, but at the same time, that was the most painful experience I've ever had running a race in those final few miles. And so learning some lessons there, and you'll get to find out whether I truly learned them well enough in the next one. So thanks for watching, and we'll do this again soon.